everybody. Okay, so how much is a life worth? I mean, how much is your child worth? Or the trees outside? Or your neighbor? Or maybe even an ant? I mean, this is an impossible question, right? I mean, in one way or another, every living organism on this planet is invaluable. But in reality, we evaluate the lives around us every single day when we decide who to spend our time on and who to spend our time with. And the value that we place on life on this planet is a direct result of our perceptions of them, what we know about that person or that organism, our relationship to them, and the impact that they have on their lives. Now, this question, what is a life worth, really led me to two of the most important lessons that I've ever had to learn in my life. And one is about me as a scientist, and one is about me as a human. So I moved to India in 2014 to study one of the most biodiverse regions on our planet in hopes that I could better learn how to preserve our ecosystems for the future. And here is our field site that we first started working in 2015. It's this beautiful rhododendron valley in North Sikkim in the Himalayas. But the next year, when we returned back to continue our research, our paradise had literally been turned into a parking lot. All the trees, all the flowers, and all that nature had disappeared, and I just sat down in that dirt and I cried. And that's when I realized that as a scientist, I had a choice. Either I could continue to study that biodiversity and watch it slowly disappear, or I could begin to work with others to find better ways to preserve our ecosystems. And that's when I had the opportunity to meet the principal scientific advisor to the government of India. And with his advice and encouragement, we started the ECHO Network, which is now a global social innovation partnership that brings public and private stakeholders together to use science to create collective goals for our human and environmental ecosystems. Now, partnerships are about people. And that brings me to my second lesson. About the same time, my campus experienced the loss of 2 students to suicide. And not only did I know both of these young women, but my own nephew had just taken his life the year before. So I was profoundly impacted by these events, and I threw myself into the aftermath, and I started working with the administration and the faculty, and I started consoling students, and I became this massive mental health and wellness advocate for change on our campus. But what I didn't expect was the mix of reactions that I would get both within and outside of my campus. I mean, of course, everybody thought that these deaths were tragedies, but not everybody believed the information that they were getting about these incidents, and others didn't really see how these incidents had anything to do with their own experiences. And still others didn't really see how anything that they could do would have any impact on the changes needed. And I became so frustrated by my inability to cause that change that I wanted to see that it really took a great toll on my own mental and eventually my physical health as well. But these 2 lessons, as difficult as they were, they taught me the most important thing that I've ever learned in my life, and that's this. If you need to know how important something is, no matter how important it is to you, whether it's a valley or it's in human life, it will only be valuable to others if they trust the information they're getting, if they value how it relates to their own lives, and if they feel responsible to make changes needed. And that's also true for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I believe that achieving the SDGs has less to do with the SDGs themselves than it actually has to do with us as human beings. Because really, to achieve these goals, we actually have to achieve the goals of trust, value, and responsibility. So let me take trust. Trust is the hardest one to obtain, right? But of course, trust is extremely important if we're going to be able to work together to achieve these SDGs. And Lord knows there is a lot of mistrust in our society today. But if we think about it, trust is also something that we have to take on as individuals. And most people, when they speak to me, they say, we want less talk and more action. But trust doesn't actually start with action. Trust actually starts with listening. And that's the secret. If we learn how to better listen to each other, I believe that we'll be able to understand each other better and realize that we actually have all the tools we need to address these goals if we just learn to work together. And if you have a problem with trust with another person, the solution doesn't start with them. It starts with you. Listening better, being open to their ideas, and seeing how they can agree with yours. The next is value. Of course, we all need to value achieving the SDGs, but how do you create value? Well, so I'm a scientist, and if I'd have told you 3 years ago about my PCR machine in my lab, you probably would have looked at me like I had 3 heads. But I bet you that if you had to travel at all in the past 2 years, that PCR machine has become your best friend, right? And it's so interesting to me how something so mundane as a little piece of lab equipment can become so essential to so many people on this planet. And you know, that's it. That's the secret of value. It's all about perception. So once we've started to work together, if we can identify common goals that are important to both of us, then that will allow us to value achieving those SDGs. The last comes with responsibility. Every single man, woman, and child on this planet has to be responsible for achieving the SDGs. But I'm an American, and I often hear from my friends and family back where I grew up, why should the US spend all this effort on achieving these environmental issues when it's really China and India that are doing all the pollution? And of course, I work in India. And of course, if you look at the carbon footprint of the average Indian or Chinese resident, it dwarfs that of the average American. But of course, it's always somebody else's fault. And it's therefore always somebody else's problem to fix. But we know that that's not true. It's all our problem. And it's not just a problem, it's become an actual crisis. And we're facing environmental crises all over the world now. And they're terrible and they're terrifying. And they affect those of us who are the least empowered to make the changes needed. But I believe that these are not just problems, but they are a vast opportunity to change the way we exist as humans on this planet. Think about it. We have to figure out new ways to grow and eat food, new ways to wear clothing, new ways to move, new ways to build cities. We have to figure out new ways to live with each other and better with our ecosystems. We don't even have to go to Mars to figure out how to live on a planet, because we actually have to figure out how to live on this one in a new way to achieve sustainability and achieve those SDGs. And I see that as a tremendous opportunity, and we can start now because there already are a lot of great ideas out there. There are ideas for how to better grow food and build cities and wear clothing and reduce consumption. And we can start in our homes, we can start with small businesses, and we can even start with multinational corporations if we look at the SDGs not as an obligation, but as an opportunity. You know, it took some pretty tough lessons for me to learn the importance of trust, value, and responsibility for achieving our goals. But it's why I'm fighting so hard for my daughter's future. So I'll leave you with this. We can start now if we just learn how to work together. And I asked at the beginning, how much is a life worth? Well, I will tell you, I think it's worth as much as every year, every hour, and every moment of our collective future. So I hope you'll join me. You'll learn to listen to each other. You'll open your hearts, because the world is calling. Thank you. Yes, you can comment. I'll take a question. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.